Skol Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fans, today's conversation is exactly the way you like it. There's trade buzz behind the scenes that could reshape not just this team, but the entire NFL. There is also a major decision hanging over the front office, a key piece of the offense getting called out, and Kevin O'Connell leaving a pretty clear clue about what the draft might bring. Then at the end, there is a defensive development that is really hitting this purple and gold fan base. And I'm telling you right now, that last story has the feel of a huge debate. Let's get into it. Some rumors feel like bar talk. Others make you stop, stare at the ceiling, and wonder if Minnesota is really lining up something massive. This one is definitely in that second category, because when a team starts talking about moving a major defensive piece to go get a name that changes the trenches, changes the pressure in the pocket, and changes how opposing offenses see the Vikings, the conversation jumps to a whole different level. This is not some minor move. This is not a simple roster tweak. This is the kind of idea that can shake up the entire NFC. And I'll tell you right now, that is exactly why so many people have been locked in on this over the last few days. The name at the center of it is Jaylen Carter. The proposal mentioned by Dustin Baker would have Minnesota landing Carter and sending Jonathan Greenard plus the number 49 pick in the second round to Philadelphia. The logic behind it was pretty clear. The Eagles may have a hard time paying for Carter's next extension, and the Vikings may run into the same kind of pressure if they have to figure out Greenard's long-term deal. So the idea being floated is basically this: each side solves the other side's problem before the bill comes due. That is what makes this worth watching. But this is where things get even more intense. Greenard is not just another player on this roster. He is an impact piece, a real name in the pass rush conversation, and even with debate around his sack production, he is still viewed as a valuable asset around the league. On the other side, Carter is the kind of interior defender who changes a snap without needing to light up the stat sheet every single play. He already has 108 tackles, 13.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and 13 passes defended across 44 career games, while last season he posted 33 tackles, 3 sacks, and 7 passes defended in 12 games. That is exactly why this conversation is not dying out. A player at that level does not just fall into your lap. Now here comes the part that splits the fan base right down the middle. Mike Florio raised the possibility that Philadelphia may be taking calls because the team already paid Jordan Davis and now has to decide who gets financial priority moving forward. That does not prove Carter is gone. Not even close, but it does show the topic is real and did not just appear out of nowhere. And when a championship team starts picking which stars it can afford, there is always enough smoke for the rest of the league to start chasing the story. And man, once that happens, your mind starts racing. Speaking as clearly as I can, I completely understand why people dream about Jaylen Carter in purple and gold. A player like that in the middle of the defensive line would be unbelievable for Brian Flores if he wants pressure coming from everywhere. At the same time, I also get why some fans are pumping the brakes because of the price and because of what it means to give up Greenard. That is the tension right there. This is not a video game. This is messing with the chemistry of a defense that is built to compete right now. And that is exactly the kind of fan perspective most people do not really dig into. But here we look at it like someone who lives and breathes Vikings football every single day. At the end of the day, this is still a projection. There is no done deal, and there is no sign Philadelphia takes that package without thinking twice. But the fact that this scenario even exists shows Minnesota may be thinking big, really big, as the draft gets closer. And if this first story already gets your blood moving, the next one hits a seat that controls everything inside the building. That is where this gets even heavier. Quick ask, subscribe to the channel, and jump into the comments too. Your opinion really matters here. There are decisions inside the Vikings organization that never show up on the field on Sunday, but still change the direction of the entire franchise. This is one of them. Because after Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's departure, there was a huge opening in one of the most important seats in the building. And when a spot like that opens up, we are not just talking about paperwork, contracts, and the draft board. We are talking about the team's vision, who keeps a steady hand on the wheel when pressure starts building and who helps shape what the Vikings are going to be over the next several years. That is why this matters more than some fans want to admit. This conversation hits directly for people who live and breathes Vikings football every day. The man at the center of it is Rob Brzezinski. Right now, he is serving as the interim guy, holding things together through the draft, and the expectation is that the final call comes after that process is over. The comment that gave this scenario even more juice came from Ben Lieber, who flat out said his money is on Rob becoming the next general manager of the Vikings. And that is not nothing, because Lieber has been around this team for years and usually does not throw out that kind of read unless he believes it. When someone with that level of access speaks that confidently, fans hear it differently. And there is a reason for that. Brzezinski has been with the organization since 1999. He has been through coaching changes, general manager changes, leadership changes, and he is still standing there. He is not some background figure. For a long time now, he has been seen as a respected voice in the building, especially when the conversation turns to structure, contracts, and long-range planning. So when his name starts gaining momentum to keep the job for good, it does not feel random. It feels like continuity with real internal weight behind it. And I know that splits people because part of the fan base wants fresh blood, while another part looks at it and says, if they trust him that much inside the building already, why go outside? That is the fork in the road. Now the real turning point comes with the draft. That is where the talk has to become results. There is a growing belief that Minnesota needs to come out of the early rounds with multiple starters and a much better hit rate, especially after years where the draft classes just did not deliver enough. There is also buzz that Dylan Thieneman, the Oregon safety, is viewed as a serious option at number 18, with the fit being framed as a natural replacement for Harrison Smith. On top of that, there is this idea that the team may lean toward players with stronger college production instead of chasing traits alone. That says a lot about the kind of philosophy that may be taking shape. Speaking as clearly as I can, I like the stability Rob Brzezinski represents, but I do not think this should be treated like an automatic decision. Being around a long time helps, but it does not guarantee talent evaluation, and it definitely does not guarantee the team is going to nail it once the clock starts moving on draft night. This purple and gold fan base has seen promising ideas go sideways more than once, and when the margin for error gets small, the general manager chair feels twice as heavy. What makes this story even stronger is simple. If Brzezinski comes out of the draft with a class that looks ready to contribute early, the odds of dropping the interim label go way up. If the result feels flat or raises more questions, the door stays open for an outside candidate. And that is where the tension everyone knows starts creeping in. The team does not just need to hit on players, it needs to get the direction right. And if they miss here, everybody feels it. But stay with me here, because the next story shifts to the offense and brings serious pressure down on a player this fan base expects a lot more from. There are moments when the Vikings offense does not need a pretty speech. It needs answers. It needs an important player looking back at his own season and admitting it was not good enough. And that conversation is even louder now because we are not talking about just any backup or somebody still trying to prove he belongs on the roster. We are talking about a player who came into the league with real expectations, obvious talent, and a clear path to being a core part of this offense for years. When a player like that slips, the fans feel it immediately. The name in the spotlight is Jordan Addison, and the message was direct. Chip Scoggins pointed to how big the 2026 season is for him, saying this is the moment to prove on the field and off the field that he can be trusted when it is time to talk about real money, and that makes sense. Last season was the worst of his career in catches, yards, and touchdowns, and it also included 7 drops, which stood out because it created the feeling that his focus was not always there. Of course, the quarterback situation was a mess. That matters, but it does not erase everything else. The numbers help explain why the pressure feels so real. Addison finished the season with a 64.9 overall PFF grade, ranking 60th out of 81 qualified wide receivers. His receiving grade was 61.7, which put him 69th on that list. On the field, he finished with 42 catches on 74 targets for 610 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaging 14.5 yards per catch. He also added 135 yards after the catch. But those 7 drops and the overall dip in production left a lot of people uneasy, and there is no way around that. When a team starts looking ahead to an extension, every little detail gets magnified. That is how guys get paid, or do not get paid. Speaking as clearly as I can, I still think Addison is far too talented to stay stuck in this phase. The problem is, the NFL does not wait for anybody. If this year starts off shaky, the conversation changes fast from key piece of the future to are we really paying this guy that kind of money? And that is where the pressure gets even bigger, because on the other side you have Justin Jefferson, who naturally commands the top spotlight, and that means the second guy in the room has to be dependable all the time, not once in a while, all the time. Tell me what you think in the comments, because this is one of those topics that really splits the fan base. And as if that pressure was not enough already, another angle popped up that hits a very real memory for Minnesota fans. Garrett Podell suggested that Stephon Diggs could make sense as a return option for the Vikings if his legal situation gets resolved. The logic is pretty simple. Jalen Nailor left for the Raiders, the team lost depth in the room, and there is now an opening at wide receiver number 3 behind Jefferson and Addison. But this topic comes with weight. Diggs is still available while dealing with a legal process in which he has pleaded not guilty, and any conversation about bringing him back starts there. This is not just about football, it is about risk, timing, and whether the fit is worth the noise. So look at how big this story gets. It starts as pressure on Jordan Addison, but then turns into a wider debate about trust, contracts, roster depth, and even the memory of a player who once lit up this franchise. That carries real weight, because if Addison responds, the offense breathes easier, and the talk about reinforcements changes. If he does not, the pressure opens the door to a much bigger discussion. And the next story goes right into that roster-building lane, except this time there is a pretty clear clue about what the team seems to be targeting in the draft. A lot of people look at the Vikings wide receiver room and think everything is already set. I am not buying that so easily. When you have two big names at the top, sure, that scares any defense. But a long season is not built on just your top two guys. It is built on depth, fit, and having answers when the game gets tight. And that is exactly why this pre-draft movement behind the scenes deserves so much attention. The team is leaving clues, not the kind that scream in your face, but enough for anybody paying close attention to understand the shape of what is happening. This story runs through Jordan Addison, but it also hits hard on Ty Felton and what the Vikings seem to want at wide receiver number 3. After Jalen Nailor left for the Raiders, a real opening was created behind Justin Jefferson and Addison. Felton, a third-round pick in 2025, has not shown clear signs yet that he has already locked down that role. And when you combine that with the pre-draft visits, the message starts looking pretty obvious. Minnesota is looking at taller, more physical receivers with a boundary profile, the kind of guy lined up out wide near the sideline. That tells you something. The names on those visits say a lot. Jeff Caldwell, Ted Hurst, C.J. Daniels, and Dejon Stribling. Every one of them has been described as an ex-receiver, and the average height of that group is just over 6'3". That stands out because the Jefferson, Addison, and Nailor trio from last season averaged just under 6 feet. So this does not feel like a coincidence. It feels like a search for a different body type to complete the room. And if that kind of player does come in, Addison could spend more time in the slot where a lot of people believe he could absolutely cook opposing defenses. That changes alignments, changes pre-snap reads, and changes how the ball gets distributed. Speaking as clearly as I can, I like this part a lot. Not because it solves everything by itself, but because it shows an effort to build the offense with pieces that complement one another better. The best trio is not always 3 similar players. Sometimes the whole secret is in the contrast. One guy stretches the field with clean routes, another one destroys you in short space, and another wins with size, timing, and physicality at the catch point. That is the kind of read people on the outside often miss. But anyone who lives and breathes Vikings football knows exactly how much variety of style matters. But this block does not stop with the offense. It also touches Dallas Turner, and that is where it gets more uncomfortable. Paul Allen raised a serious question when he said the Vikings want to play Turner, but it still is not clear exactly what his role is, because Jonathan Greenard and Andrew Van Ginkel are both still ahead of him in that pecking order. That line about not really knowing what to do with Turner hits hard because he is still young, only 23 years old. And one of the biggest advantages of taking a player in the first round is maximizing that rookie contract while he develops. If that growth gets stalled, the cost starts to feel heavier in a hurry, and that is where this gets tricky. Do you see how all of this connects? The draft could reveal a clear plan at wide receiver number 3, but it also shines a light on questions in other parts of the roster. If Minnesota is moving to change the shape of the receiver room, that is already a sign of fine-tuning on offense. If there is still uncertainty at the same time about how Dallas Turner will be used, then the team is clearly still trying to solve important pieces while also pushing to compete right now. That alone would be a big story. But the next one goes even further because it involves internal recruiting, a possible trade, and a defense that could end up looking seriously loaded. Some front office movement looks small at first, but once you start pulling on the thread, you realize it could change the look of the defense in a big way. That is exactly what happened here. It started with a subtle signal from the outside, almost the kind of thing you could miss if you were not paying attention, but fans always catch it right away. And when that signal involves a respected veteran, a sensitive spot on the roster, and a possible perfect fit in Brian Flores' system, there is no way the conversation stays quiet. This thing picked up fast. Really fast. The name at the center of it is Kenny Moore II. After the news broke that he and the Colts were working together to find a trade, there was a pretty interesting little push from Isaiah Rodgers, who played with Moore in Indianapolis, and posted a picture of the two of them along with the trade report. It was not an announcement, it was not anything official, but it was the kind of soft recruiting move that instantly gets fans imagining the fit, the scenario, and even the price tag. And speaking very directly, when somebody already on the roster starts making that kind of move, the conversation takes on a whole new life among the fans. And this is not just any name on the market. Moore is entering the final year of his contract with a $10 million salary for 2026, and the general belief around the league is that the trade cost probably would not be more than a fourth-round pick, mainly because he is a veteran turning 31 in August, and the Colts are openly shopping him. Even so, the production absolutely stands out. Across 9 seasons with Indianapolis, he has played in 132 regular season games and totaled 21 interceptions, including 4 pick-sixes, 68 passes defended, 39 tackles for loss, and 11.5 sacks. For a slot corner, that is serious production. Speaking as clearly as I can, I love the idea on paper. Kenny Moore II has football intelligence, attacks the run, understands blitz timing, and feels like exactly the kind of player who could fit naturally into the organized chaos Flores likes to create. If you put Moore with Byron Murphy Jr., Isaiah Rodgers, and James Pierre, that cornerback room suddenly gets more experience, more versatility, and more freedom to change alignments without breaking the system. That is not a small detail. In an aggressive defense, a reliable slot corner is worth a lot. And no, I am not overstating that. Of course, there is another side to it. Moore is going to turn 31 in August, so nobody is talking about a 5-year answer here. This would be a short-term move, maybe an immediate impact move, built around a team that believes its competitive window is open right now. And that fits where the Vikings seem to be. This roster looks built to push now, not to sit around for 3 years waiting for everybody to grow up. If the price really does stay in that more manageable range, it makes a lot of sense to consider it. That is why this one is sneaky important. Maybe it does not happen. Maybe it dies as just another conversation. But it is absolutely worth discussing. And the most interesting part is how this story closes the whole package with a different kind of weight. You started with a huge trade rumor, moved through a major front office decision, pressure on an important offensive player, a draft clue, and uncertainty around the fit of a young defensive piece. Now you have the possibility of adding a veteran who is smart, ready, and stylistically perfect for the coordinator. At that point, this is no longer just a collection of random stories. It starts to sketch out the kind of team Minnesota wants to become. And that is exactly where this whole conversation gets even more serious. And at the end of the day, that is what makes this moment around the Vikings feel so electric. There is a major rumor shaking up the defense, a heavy front office decision, real pressure on an important offensive player, a clear draft clue, and now this possible veteran addition in the secondary. You cannot call this a quiet stretch. Minnesota is at a point where every move can either push this team forward for real or turn up the pressure on everyone in the building even more. What do you think about all of this? Drop your comment below and let your voice be heard. Stay tuned. Skol Vikings, let's go.